This is the High-Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm Eric Balkman from the High-Stakes Fantasy Football Hour and the FFPC. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Balkman and the FFPC on Twitter at FFPC. Before we get into the show, I want to remind everyone that you can get a listeners-only 10% discount to RotoViz by using the code RVRadio2022. That's RVRADIO2022. Your subscription gives you unlimited access to all of the RotoViz content and tools, and it supports the podcast channel. Now, without further ado, here's the latest edition of the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. Well, thank you, Eric Balkman. This is indeed the latest edition of the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. Before we get into the show, obviously, RV Radio 2022 is where what you want to do for your rotoviz.com promo code. That's a listeners only 10% discount, or viewers only 10% discount in this case. Subscription gives you unlimited access to all the RotoViz content, as well as all the RotoViz tools, and it supports the podcast channel that allows us to do the show each and every week. Now, before I get into tonight's guest, we have a special thing going on with the FFPC, something we've never really done before. It's the FFPC Weekly Challenge. If you love the playoff challenge format, you're going to love this new contest as well. There's no draft. There's no salary cap. You choose 10 or 12 players by kickoff on Sunday, and you watch them ride it out through all the weekend's games. Only one player per NFL team. You can enter for $35, you can enter for $200, and you can win up to $10,000. 30-team contest, 150-team contest. You can play the classic or the slim with no kickers and defense. You can enter up to 3 times in the 30-team contest or 5 times in the 150-team contest. Go to myffpc.com/weekly challenge to join that right now. I have a feeling tonight's guest may or may not be joining those challenges this week as well. Let's bring him in right now. He has won 7 FFPC Main Event and Footballguys leagues over the course of his career. He has 5 top 10 overall finishes in the NFFC, NFBC, and the FFPC. And you can follow him on Twitter at @the_guilds. Please welcome into the program once again, Andrew Geller. Andrew, what's up, man?
Hey, Balky, how you doing? Thanks for
good.
having me on.
I'm excited to have you. Thank you, number one, for doing the Better Sports Network coverage of the live FFPC drafts back in Vegas with myself and Kyle Elfrink. That was awesome. And by the way, Better Sports Network, the high-stakes fantasy football show airing tomorrow, 10 to 12 Eastern times on the Better Sports Network app. Make sure you're checking that out. Download the app so you have the opportunity to win all the prizes we're going to give away on that show. But getting back to you, number one, let's kick things off. I don't think I asked you this before. Where does the guilds come from? What is the etymology of your team name? Because I know it used to be the guilds. Now you've branched off into other different team names, which is totally cool. But on Twitter, _guilds.
Yeah, so I had a buddy. It's back in high school. Used to hang out, be at parties, and he would be a little intoxicated, I guess you could say. And he'd be trying to say my last name, and he would just mumble out like this guilds thing. And so me and my buddies were like, what is he even saying? We didn't even know what he was saying. And then it kind of stuck from there. So, I mean, this is, going on, I don't even know, 15 plus years now. So I just brought that to Twitter, and that kind of became, my handle, my persona, if you will,
All right. So the other thing I'll bring up too is you have your Twitter photo, Danny Dimes. So yeah. Is this I can never tell, and I don't want to insult you now. Is this because you're a fan of Daniel Jones or because you dislike Daniel Jones?
No, so I somebody had posted that, when he was first drafted, a few years ago, and I saw that on Twitter, and I actually DM'd the guy. I'm like, do you mind if I steal that? I'm like, this is amazing. There's something about it. I don't know. I just thought it was hilarious. So I put it as my avatar, and it kind of just stuck since then. And I'm hoping he plays well, so I don't have to take down my Twitter avatar next year. But
well, do you think he's going to play well this year? Because it seems like he's off to an okay start.
You know what? I think they're winning, like, in spite of him right now. I mean, he's not making the big, fumbles or the big mental mistakes. He had a huge clutch play to win to ice the game last week. But if you can keep those mistakes down, I mean, you see flashes, you see those moments where you're like, this guy has the skills, he has that skill set. He's mobile. He can make every throw. And you're just like, that's what's so disappointing. You see those flashes and he's just not consistent enough. So
yeah,
this is it. It's a do or die year. If he doesn't do it, he's probably gone after this year, but I'm still going to keep that avatar no matter what.
It's a gorgeous avatar, which we have up on the screen right now. And we see where we can follow you, obviously, at _guilds, which is good stuff. But let's get into the meat and potatoes of the program tonight. And we'll kick things off. And I'm trying to talk about players that you have invested in this year. Some heavily, maybe some not so heavily. But DK Metcalf, 71 yards through his first 2 games of the Geno Smith era. Leave it up to you, Andrew. Why should people not be panicking and maybe contemplating about benching him in week 3, which I think he has Atlanta this week. So it's a pretty good matchup. But why should or should not people be benching DK Metcalf in week 3?
I'm never benching him.
Never's a strong word. Never's a strong word.
I mean, he's just a guy. He's one of those rare, guys in fantasy that can go off for 30 any week. You don't want to be too, think too much about it and sit him when he goes off for that, 6 for 80 and 2 touchdown week. He did get 13 targets in 2 games. I mean, it's not terrible.
He's been getting a lot of targets. That's true. A lot of targets.
And I did read something earlier too that they're trying to open up the passing game, moving forward. So his time will come. He's too big. He's too fast. If Geno can just kind of, keep his head above water and, be somewhat, average even and just not terrible, I think, the points will come. But yeah, I mean, he was getting drafted in round 5, 6. So, I mean, you probably have a good 3 or 4 better options, definitely 3 right now. But yeah, he's going to take up my second flex more often, unless he gets hurt. I'm just going to roll with it. And, his floor is still, 10, 11, 12 fantasy points. You're not getting nothing from him, but those blow-up games are going to come sooner than later.
DK Metcalf drafted, as Andrew pointed out, wide receiver 28. This was the last 2 days of the FFPC main event, so that's Saturday and that's Sunday. Metcalf, wide receiver 28 at the 506, right behind Rashad Bateman, right behind Chris Godwin, and then, of course, right ahead of Darnell Mooney and ahead of Michael Thomas. And, true to Andrew's statement, 6 targets in game 1 against the Niners for 4 catches for 35 yards. And then in the last game, he caught all 7 of his targets for 36 yards. So maybe not the yardage you're looking for, but still heavily involved in the passing game, which is really what you're looking for at this point, because the yardage will come, as Andrew just stated. Now, the yardage came for Garrett Wilson in game 2. Huge game for him. And Corey Davis, you can make the case, he had a big game too. But remember, one of those big plays that he had was that busted coverage for the Browns at the end. So here's what we know about Garrett Wilson. Highly drafted rookie receiver, big part of their future, but started the season playing behind Corey Davis and Elijah Moore. Now Garrett Wilson has the big game in week 2, Elijah Moore not so much. What does Garrett Wilson's big game mean for FFPC players who are looking either to start him or maybe Elijah Moore going forward, Andrew?
Yeah, so Garrett Wilson's in your lineup every week moving forward. That's it. I mean, he had the pedigree coming out. Everybody was concerned about the situation with Zach Wilson and the Jets. That's the only reason why he was falling in drafts. I mean, you saw Drake London. He was getting picked in like the 6th, 7th round. He went to a good situation in Atlanta. If you reverse those roles, Garrett Wilson would have been taken in round 6 or 7. But yeah, he just jumps off the screen. You could tell. I mean, it's one of these guys you see like Chase or Justin Jefferson. That's what you see, on the field now with Garrett Wilson. As long as the quarterback play is, even mediocre, he's going to probably smash his ADP. And Elijah Moore, unfortunately, I think is the casualty to what we're going to see moving forward. I think he's going to be startable. Don't get me wrong, but the idea that Elijah Moore is going to be a top 15, 20 wide receiver, I think that's already out the window. Yeah.
You're willing to make that call this early in the season on Elijah Moore?
Yeah, I think I think Garrett Wilson already, I mean, you could see Elijah Moore is very good too. Don't get me wrong. He's going to be a solid player. I would definitely flex him every week. And, but the idea that, or the hope that he was going to be the alpha, the guy that's commanding all the targets, I think that's out the window now.
Interesting.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson, like when you saw Justin Jefferson and Chase, even Tony, his first couple of games, you could see it all, just jump off the screen. I mean, they're special talents. So I think he's going to be the alpha there. He's going to command the targets. And unfortunately, Elijah Moore, he'll probably be second in target from what I think. I still think he's going to be like a Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, where they both could be solid fantasy contributors. But if you're asking me right now who I want moving forward, it's Garrett Wilson.
All right. So let me ask you this. How does that analysis change when I'm assuming the inevitable return of Zach Wilson will not Joe Flacco out of the starting quarterback position? So when that happens, how much are you reevaluating Davis, Moore, and Wilson?
Yeah, that's a big question. I mean, but it's funny. Last year we saw Flacco favor Elijah Moore, so it's interesting that you see him now. He's eyeing Garrett Wilson over Moore, but I mean, that's the big question. None of us really know. And that's pretty much why Wilson was falling in drafts, is just because the uncertainty around Zach Wilson. We don't really know if he's good. I mean, he could very well go out there and just, stink up the joint. And you're like, oh, put Joe Flacco back in there. But I don't know. I'm leaning on the side that Wilson's going to be good. He's got a huge arm. He's mobile. The pieces are there. The offensive line is a little shaky. But yeah, I mean, if Joe Flacco could produce, I mean, you would think a young stud like this can too. So I think the arrow is fully pointing up for all Jets, running backs as well.
Which is good. And I'll ask you about the Jets running backs here in a little bit, but I just want to get this out the window. Week 1 for Garrett Wilson, 8 targets. He makes 4 catches for 52 yards. Week 2, 14 targets, 8 catches, 102 yards. Obviously, the 2 touchdowns we saw. Elijah Moore, week 1, 5 receptions on 7 targets, only 3 catches for 5 targets in week 2. But that's still 12 targets for him in the first 2 weeks. Garrett Wilson, 22 targets. This is something we will monitor going forward. Something else we're going to monitor going forward, which is something you just alluded to with the Jets. Breece Hall, first NFL touchdown this past week, and to me, outplayed Michael Carter on similar touches. Have we already seen the transition of Breece Hall from Michael Carter start to happen, Andrew?
I think so. I think Carter's good enough where he's going to be a factor all season, just because, I mean, he's pretty good in his own right, but you could definitely see the talent disparity when both are on the field. Breece Hall just has that stud, workhorse, 3-down skill set. So I think as time goes on and week by week, we're going to see more and more Breece Hall than Michael Carter. But unless Carter goes on, I don't see them fully just giving it like JT last year. I don't see that happening just because I think Carter is good enough in his own right. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think end of the season, you're going to want to have Breece Hall in your starting lineup, if not by midseason even. I mean, he's already produced on, limited touches in the first 2 weeks. So very bullish on him moving forward.
You're looking at 20 total touches for Breece Hall in the first 2 weeks, 29 total touches for Michael Carter. Breece Hall already with 7 catches, but Michael Carter had 7 catches alone week 1. He's got 12 on the season. So something we will be paying attention to. Andrew is of the opinion that Breece Hall is going to be the man. I tend to agree with that. I think the draft capital speaks for itself. Whether that happens week 3 or week 7, week 8, week 10, that's up for debate. But I think it's going to be sooner than later that Breece Hall is going to be the man that you want in New York. A guy that I thought the Giants wanted in New York is Kadarius Toney. First round pick, right? Showed the flashes last year. Very excited about him going into year 2. Little trepidation at the draft table. And he fell a little bit in a lot of drafts. But I didn't predict, and I wasn't the biggest Kadarius Toney fan. I didn't predict what we've seen so far, where he's basically non-existent in this Brian Daboll offense. Andrew Geller, what is going on with Kadarius Toney in New York right now?
I honestly, people are going to be surprised when I say this, but I think the arrow is actually pointing up with Kadarius moving forward. Now, he was banged up. We saw those injury reports early on. But all the reports, in New York right now is his attitude is positive. Coaches are liking what he's saying. It's just a matter of now kind of getting up to speed, getting fully healthy. And you saw his snaps. He had like 7 snaps week 1. It was up to 20 something. He's building up, and we saw Galladay. He might not even be on a team, in 2 weeks.
Cleaned out his locker, which was crazy to me.
Yeah.
Because they can't get rid of him at this point. His contract's too crazy.
No. To me, Tony, it's only going to get better and better. I think every week. And by midseason, I think health, assuming health, of course. But that's another guy that just put him on your bench. Don't play him now. You should not be starting him. But give it a couple of weeks, and I think he's going to be a fixture in everybody's lineup, moving forward.
Yeah, it's something very interesting, and we will be looking forward to what Kadarius Toney does. Trying to see his snap count right here. So he only had 7, obviously, in week 1. That was 12% of the Giants' offensive snaps. That quadrupled. He is now 28 snaps total in week 2. 38% of all the Giants' offensive snaps. And then he also got 3 targets this past week as well, which he got, 0 targets? Yeah, 0 targets week 1.
Yeah.
So hopefully you're right, and this is good news for Kadarius Toney, because right now it's very, very difficult to start him. And we want to start him because he's a prolific talent. He's a guy that you want in your starting lineup.
Yeah, and to me, the more important thing is his attitude, because that's always been, especially here in the New York area. I mean, that's the one thing, he had kind of the diva persona, if you will. But from all reports, he's committed, he's saying all the right things. He's doing all the right things. So it's just a matter of him getting up to speed with this new playbook and having the coaches buy in. But, let's be honest, once he's out there on the field, he's easily the most talented receiver on his team. I don't even think it's close. So it's just a matter of time. I'm telling you, he's going to be a difference maker, especially in these fantasy football tournaments, I think.
How do you compare him to Wan'Dale Robinson, just talent-wise, which I know we don't necessarily care about for fantasy, but there is somewhat of a care as far as when we just look at talent between those two. Are they comparable?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, I think they can be used similarly too. Like, they get that fast twitch, burst right from catching the ball. I think Wan'Dale will be used more closer to the line of scrimmage, in a lot of like bubble screens and even sweeps, rushing plays. Whereas, Toney can stretch the field a little more, I think. But yeah, similar burst, similar explosiveness. So, once he's healthy and Toney's out there, Shepard's actually looking pretty good, which, surprised me how good he has looked. The Giants, they have an offense here, that can compete. So, and they're off to 2-0 start, and really they haven't played that great offensively. So it's only going to get better, I think, for the Giants, which, it's been a while since I said that, but I'm very bullish on them as well.
Let's talk about a team that I guess you could make a case that has gotten off to a solid start offensively. I mean, they've gotten 53 points total in the first 2 games. But their stud player, Kyle Pitts, a guy who went in the late first round, that final weekend in the FFPC main event, one of the players that I kind of regretted not getting enough shares of. But now I look at him through the first 2 weeks, Andrew. He got 7 targets week 1, only caught 2 of them for 19 yards. Then he only gets 3 targets this past week against the Rams. Again, he only catches 2 of them for 19 yards. He's a prolific player. He is a difference maker at tight end. This is why all these FFPC high-stakes drafters put such a premium on him, yet he's off to a slow start. Can you explain the slow start at all?
I really can't. I mean, it's just the coaching. It just makes you scratch your head. I mean, plus they were trailing, right? They were trailing all game. How does a guy like that get 3 targets when you're down 20-something points in a game? It's just, I mean, I'm one of those drafters. I was taking him, in the second. Anytime I saw him mid to late second, I was taking him. You saw kind of Arthur Smith taking some heat around not using him more. So I think it's the hours pointing up for sure. I mean, obviously the first 2 weeks were a disaster, but it would not surprise me if they just force feed him the ball this week after all the heat he's getting. And if he was tight end 1, after this week, I would not be surprised. So nobody bench this guy. Don't even think about benching him. You just got to roll him out there, and it's going to get better. And I think this week you'll see a huge focus and a huge attempt to get him to rock as much as possible.
It's kind of what we saw in week 2. I mean, everybody was on Matt LaFleur for not using Aaron Jones enough in week 1, only gets 8 touches. And then he was almost exclusively used on Sunday Night Football against the Bears, where he got a ton of, squeaky wheel getting the grease there as well. And when you talk about not benching him, I'm totally with you. You cannot bench Kyle Pitts, especially in a tight end premium league. You got to keep trotting him out there. He's going to make plays at some point. I am totally on board with that. I'm trying to find right now the total in that game. Oh, Falcons Seahawks. This is a 425 start on Sunday. That game is actually only at 42. The Seahawks are a 2-point favorite. You'd like to see Kyle Pitts get involved much earlier. And Arthur Smith, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, wasn't he the tight end guy from Tennessee? Wasn't he the guy that was coaching the tight ends there and turned in big seasons from like Jonnu Smith and now with Kyle Pitts, he's got the Lamborghini. He's just got to drive.
Yeah. I mean, it makes you scratch your head. It really doesn't make any sense. I mean, I wish I knew why. He's a mismatch against anyone, on any team. So the fact that you gave him 3 targets in a game you're trailing, it's just crazy. Now I will say Drake London has looked really good. So I was surprised to see how much of a factor he's been, early in the season. So, I'm not taking anything away from Pitts. I still think he's going to be a monster when it's all said and done. But Drake London could be the alpha there, as in the short term. I mean, at least Mariota looks like he's favoring him over Pitts for sure. So better days are ahead for sure. So hopefully you made it out 1-1, maybe even 2-0 with Pitts on your team. If that's the case, you're gravy, and then just keep on rolling them out there.
Chef's kiss on that. Absolutely. You're 2-0 with Kyle Pitts as your first or second round pick. You're doing things right at this point. Let's talk about another tight end in Baltimore. Now, Devin Duvernay returns the opening kickoff against the Dolphins for a touchdown. Then he only gets 2 targets the rest of the way, basically 42 yards, and was not involved. And then he got concussed in the fourth quarter. Now, when he got concussed, Isaiah Likely came in this game. Isaiah Likely, who in week 1, 4 targets, no catches. 5 targets in week 2. He catches 4 of them for 43 yards. And you say, Balky, why do we care? We care because the FFPC is a tight end premium format. If Duvernay can't get ready and he can't clear this concussion for week 3, the Baltimore Ravens, who are just involved in a shootout against the Miami Dolphins, will be going up against in week 3 the New England Patriots. Now, the total on that's only 43.5, and the Ravens are a 3-point favorite. But is likely a start for you, even though he's going to be behind Mark Andrews on the depth chart, if Duvernay can't go on Sunday?
I mean, that's a tough start still. I mean, you have to be pretty weak, which, is very much a possibility for a lot of teams right now at tight end. I would still kind of rank him as a low end, tight end 1, maybe, a higher end tight end 2.
And at that point, you got to start him, right? I mean, if you have him.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't have, those 8-9 tight ends, one of those on your roster. Yeah. I mean, I could see starting him and just, hoping he gets 5 for 60, something like that. But yeah, I feel like the Patriots too, that's probably not a good matchup. Just, I never like playing Belichick, especially in New England. So, yeah, I mean, he's not the worst start to me at all, but I mean, I wouldn't advise starting him over, a top 10 option or, top 8 option at that point. All right, but I mean, not many people have top 8, top 9, after the tight ends. I tweeted something earlier where it's almost like, after the first 4, 5 tight ends, right now, you're pretty much, it's a pretty scary situation out there. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have one of those top, 3 or 4 elite tight ends, and, somebody, tweeted back Goddard and Everett, which, they've been steady as well, but yeah, you're starting a bunch of guys that you're just praying for 10 points these days. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty thin out there at the tight end spot.
Let me throw this at you. We're going to talk about Tyler Higbee in a second, so I'm not going to ask you about him. Let's say you're in an FFPC main event, the Footballguys Players Championship. Let's say you drafted Zach Ertz as what? Tight end 8, tight end 9, somewhere around there. Let's say you got Gerald Everett at like tight end 13, and you picked up Isaiah Likely in the first waiver wire of the year. Could you make a case for starting Ertz, Everett, and Isaiah Likely if Duvernay is out in week 3?
Jeez, no, I don't think I could, because I mean that means you're starting Likely as a flex option over a wide receiver, which, I mean, if you can't find a better wide receiver right now to play over Likely, I mean, you're in real trouble. So
if that's the lineup you're trying out with tight ends, you're hamstringing yourself, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah. I mean, if he was a stud tight end, if you had something like Kelsey, Waller, and let's say even Higbee, who's been a beast. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd throw Higbee in that second flex because he's just been a monster so far. But you can't. I don't think you could throw a shaky, borderline, tight end 1-2 in that flex, unless you're absolutely desperate. It's a bye week or something. But yeah, I would not advise that.
Tyler Higbee, you just mentioned him. 12 catches in 2 games for the Rams. He has seen 20 targets. He has gotten 110 receiving yards so far. Hasn't found the end zone, but maybe this is good because everybody's sleeping on him at this point. When you look at Higbee and the Rams, as I look to the week 3 schedule, the Los Angeles Rams, Matthew Stafford, Tyler Higbee, Cooper Kupp, and the like are playing against the Arizona Cardinals at 425. Juicy matchup. 49 points on the total. The Rams are 3.5-point favorites currently. Higbee, is he a must start no matter how you constructed your team?
Must start option, Higbee. 20 targets through 2 games. No Robert Woods, no Van Jefferson there, no Odell. The target tree is super small. You got Kupp, you got Allen Robinson, and you got Higbee. The running backs are all banged up. You don't really, get much out of the passing game from them. So, I mean, he's got 20 targets in 2 games, and I've been a Higbee stan, since that, the huge year he had. And shout out to the Fantasy Mojo who likes to, put pies in my face every time I mention Higbee's name. But this is a talented guy, and I was screaming it always. I'm like, they need to get this guy the ball more. Like every time he got the ball, he produced, and for some reason McVay would just not go back to him. So it was the most maddening thing I've ever seen. And now he's actually getting that volume. So if you give Higbee volume, he's going to be easily a top, 5-6 tight end, I think, in this offense. It's just the volume is there. And listen, when he has the ball in his hands, he could do big things. So I'm all aboard the Higbee train. Higbelieve, hashtag Higbelieve, I say. So if you got Higbee, you roll him out there, over in your flex if you have to. If you have another, Kelsey or Waller or something, I'm starting Higbee wherever I have him, no matter what. So until that volume slows down, he's in my lineup.
Do you think, I mean, we heard all offseason about the Stafford elbow concerns. Do you think that is at all related to maybe why Higbee is getting a lot of these targets over the middle rather than Robinson on the perimeter?
I don't think so. I really just think they don't have those options they had a year ago. Higbee a lot of times was the 4th, 5th option in a passing game. Sometimes, even less. So I think he's a strong 3rd passing option on an offense that likes to throw the ball. Plus you have Kupp, gaining that coverage or getting that attention from the defense. So you're going to see a lot of open holes up the seam with Higbee. And as I keep saying, if you give him the volume, he's going to be, easy tight end 1, top 12 tight end. And I think even top 5 is in his range of outcomes if he continues to get this volume, for sure.
Non-tight end premium league. I was in a private dynasty league I'm in. I had to make some cut downs for dynasty, and I had to make a decision between Tyler Higbee and TJ Hawkinson, and I guessed wrong. Really, really wishing I would have kept Higbee instead of Hawkinson, but such is life, such is fantasy. Also on that same private dynasty league team, I have James Cook. Now, let's look at him from a redraft perspective. Week 1, opening night, FFPC viewing party. What a tremendous time it was. I know you were there, Andrew. It was great. 1 carry, 2 yards, no targets. Then week 2 comes, Monday night. 11 carries, 53 yards, including a 33-yard run. He got a target in that game as well, but it was a blowout against the Titans. Can we glean anything with James Cook's usage in that game as far as what we can correlate what he's going to do the rest of the season now? Or do we just have to throw out that performance, say, hey, both teams, they knew it was a blowout. Nobody was doing anything that game. James Cook was just in garbage time. How do you view Cook's usage?
Yeah, so I was really high on Cook, coming out of college and going to the Bills. The draft capital was there, second round pick. So I was very bullish, but I did a lot of talking to my guys in Buffalo. Shout out to the Draft Sharks crew, Adam, Mike Shope, Louis G. So they were giving me the intel in Buffalo. They're all Buffalo guys, that they didn't see, a big role for James Cook this year. Even before the season started, they thought it was going to be Singletary, and kind of just mixing Cook here and there. But just looking at this team through 2 weeks, even taking what they said, at face value, they're so good, the Bills. They're going to be ahead almost in every game. So to me, a guy like James Cook is going to lose value just from, that's not his role. He's a pass catching back. So if they're going to be playing from ahead in 90% of games, I don't envision a huge role moving forward. I mean, I think he's more explosive, than a Singletary for sure. He's definitely their best pass catching back, but this team is so loaded offensively. I don't know that they even need him, as crazy as that sounds. So I don't know what's going to happen this year. Obviously you got to hold him for sure. And, I'm not high on Singletary. I think he's kind of just a guy, especially, in the receiving game. He doesn't really bring much to the table there. So he's a clear stash, James Cook, at this point. If anything ever happened to Singletary, I could see more carries. That's another thing too. People are very down on him actually getting, a significant number of touches, as far as the running game goes. But I would say right now, just hold him, kind of see if his role grows a little bit. I wouldn't put much stock in what we saw last night. It was a blowout. They wanted to get Singletary out of there. I mean, if anything, that would probably make me even more down on him, since he's in the game up, 35, 40 points. And
right.
They just sit Singletary, to keep him healthy. So, clear stash and hold. That's really all you can do. You can't start him with any confidence at all right now. And just kind of read the tea leaves and see kind of where maybe his role grows as we move along. But I'm a little, sour on James Cook. Definitely was more bullish before the season started.
Let's continue the conversation on running backs, and about two running backs that I really don't know if they're safe to start this week. If James Conner misses, which we found out that the ankle injury, according to Ian Rappaport, is not considered long-term or serious, but it's James Conner. Let's be frank. Everything is long-term and serious with him, no matter how innocent the injury appears. We don't know what he's going to do. We're recording this here on Tuesday evening. We don't know what the practice report's going to look like. But let's just say Conner is ruled out. Eno Benjamin in this game after Conner, well, not even after Conner left, throughout the whole game, Benjamin had one more touch than Darrell Williams. Now, I believe Williams got into the end zone, but Benjamin still had one more touch than him. If Conner's out this week, how useful are either of these players? And I look at it from a zero RB standpoint. If you drafted Williams, if you drafted Benjamin, and you're looking to maybe plug these guys in if Conner's out, how useful can they be if they're both going to be cannibalizing each other for touches? Or do you believe that one of these guys will take the lead role over the other?
So I don't believe one will take the lead role. But what looks, to me is that Darrell Williams is the backup to Conner, in terms of rushing attempts. That's what the role looks like. Where I had hoped Eno would kind of just assume that. I think he has that 3-down skill set. So it's kind of a bummer seeing Darrell Williams still taking that large, of a share of the backfield. So I think moving forward, you treat both of them like flex options, nothing more. For sure, pick up both if they're available in your leagues. I'm assuming Eno's mostly owned, at least in FFPC. He's
mostly
owned. Yeah. But Darrell Williams, he's definitely out there in a ton of leagues. So that's probably the number one waiver wire pickup, assuming Conner is out this week, which he still might not be out. But I still think no matter what, Eno's going to play that Chase Edmonds role, regardless of whether it's Conner or it's Darrell Williams. So I think there's value there. I don't think you're going to see that smash, workhorse, RB2, RB1 upside with Eno, like a lot of us owners envisioned before the season. So, which is unfortunate, but I still think there's value. We were drafting Eno around 13, 14, sometimes later. You're getting like a weekly flex option. I mean, that's still pretty good. I just don't know if that ceiling is quite there for Eno, which is, disappointing.
It is disappointing. I mean, I was drafting Benjamin over Williams. I mean, as most people were. Yeah. And I think it's frustrating. And the other thing too is and I think you kind of just answered it. If you're looking at rostering one of these guys for the upcoming week, or maybe just going forward, and you only have one spot on your roster, at this point, you're going Darrell Williams over Benjamin, right?
That's a tough one.
Maybe not. Maybe I assumed incorrectly here.
I think Eno is the more explosive back. I think he has that skill set where he can carry the load. So to me, if you're going to play the more talented back, which to me is Eno Benjamin for sure, but Darrell Williams.
But now we're guessing what Cliff Kingsbury is going to do,
right? And that's a mistake.
Yeah,
exactly. So he's a safe. He does what you want him to do. He doesn't flash at all, Darrell Williams, but he gets you, 3.5, 4 yards a carry. He catches the ball, so he does just enough to play. But to me, Eno is that guy that has that. He has that upside that Darrell Williams I don't see had. That he has that in him. So, but like you said, it's up to these coaches a lot of times, and in their eyes, they could be like, all right, we're rolling Darrell Williams out there 90% of the touches, and we'll let Eno be a change of pace back for 20 snaps or whatever. So, to me, unfortunately, I think it's Darrell Williams is probably the primary benefactor to James Conner, and Eno is still going to play that same role he has in the first 2 weeks.
The important thing is if either of these guys are on your waiver wire, snag them.
Pick them up.
Sure, this
absolutely,
and figure it out later. Get the asset, figure out how to deploy the asset later. That's the advice that we can give with FFPC waivers not going off until Wednesday, which is tomorrow evening. All right. Brian Robinson, the latest report we got about him was roughly a week ago. A week ago tomorrow, he was doing side work at Commanders practice. Adam Schefter also reported that there is a realistic chance that Robinson is back for week 5 against the Titans. So, I mean, I looked at especially my Kentucky leagues. I saw he was available in a couple of them last week. I put in some bids on him. Quite frankly, I'm not sure if I got him because I was more, interested in the players that were going to be playing in week 2 when I set my lineups. But if he's out there, or if you have him, the bye week gauntlet starts week 6. And I guess this question is answered for us if he comes back in week 5. But if he's not, Andrew, how hard are you going to fight to keep this guy on your roster, knowing that Antonio Gibson is still there in Washington, as well as J.D. McKissic?
Yeah, to me, that's a guy, if he's out there, I would pick him up now for cheap if you can, just to stash on your bench. Like you said, we're going to know, he can play week 5. So we're going to definitely know more news, whether that's positive or negative prior to, the bye week starting. So, and I love Gibson. I'm a Gibson stan. Anyone who follows me knows that. But this Washington offense looks, elite. I mean, I can't believe I'm saying that with Carson Wentz at the helm, but I mean,
Curtis Samuel, baby, just crush
Curtis Samuel. I mean, the whole offense. I mean, they're loaded. So I mean, to me, you want to kind of grab pieces if you can, and we know the coaching staff isn't enamored with Gibson. We saw that in the preseason. They're ready to give the job to Robinson in the preseason. So, to me, he's an easy stash, and just kind of wait for news to come out and. I saw the video of him. I don't know if you saw that too, practicing running the tight ropes or whatever. I mean, he looked amazing. Yeah. So I honestly think I thought it was crazy that he could be back, towards, before the end of the year, but I don't think it's that crazy. This is a guy that, he looks super motivated to come back and looks to be completely healthy, which is, insane to say, but to me, he's a must add if he's out there and just stash, and a couple of Gibson fumbles, and you never know what could happen. And if you have the bench space, definitely pick him up.
When I was in Louisville for the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship 2 weeks before Las Vegas, I was in a Sunday evening draft, and a lot of heavy hitters in that draft. We had the former Kentucky champs turned FFPC league champs in Darren Larson, Brad Petrie were in that draft. Jay Reed, Danny Miller, former guests of this show. A ton of really good players. Ralph Chavon, who you might know from RT Sports, he was in that draft, drafting next to me. Wasn't a fan of that either. But a lot of really good players. Brad Taylor was also in that draft. Brad Taylor does radio, and I want to say in Lexington, Kentucky. I could be wrong on that, but I know he does radio on Sundays. He can only make it to the very tail end of the KFFSC every year live, and he showed up for this Sunday evening draft. And then I want to say in like round 9 or round 10, he drafted Brian Robinson. We're the only draft going on. And the proctor, Bob Butterfield, another former guest of the HSFF Hour, Bob Butterfield says to him, he got shot. And then Brad Taylor's reaction was, what, today? And, like as if a week ago would have been okay or 2 weeks ago. Right. But he say, he got to, like just hours ago he was shot. Gentleman's agreement. We just let him pick over again. We didn't care. So Brad took somebody else. Brian Robinson did not go drafted in that draft. Nobody took him. Not in the 18th, not in the 19th, and I looked at my draft and I was pretty happy with my team afterwards, but I was looking at it. God, nobody took Robinson. I don't know what the gunshot wound return ratio is. I have no idea. I didn't know where it was shot. I don't know if it hurt ligaments or whatever, but I kind of regretted. I'm like, God, I probably should have just taken a chance on Brian Robinson before I took a kicker or something like that. And I did. But if he's out there, like you just said, pick him up. If you have him on your team, keep the faith, and you never know what's going to happen. Like you said, a fumble here or a fumble there for Gibson, all of a sudden things open up again. I love that analysis. That is good analysis of Brian Robinson.
Absolutely. I mean, this Washington offense, I mean, I think everyone is just taken back at how good, how potent they look. And I think it's for real. I mean, you got if Samuel's healthy, you got 3 stud receivers, you got a good running game. Tight end, they're solid there also. Logan Thomas looks like he's all the way back. I mean, the NFC East looks like the AFC
West. Yeah, it's true.
I'm telling you,
dude, the Eagles. Eagles. It was insane watching them. Washington and Dallas. I mean, a lot of people thought that Dallas was the team to beat, and now we don't know with Prescott. But then they pulled out a win against Cincinnati. New York. We've been talking about. What's your feeling on Barkley this year?
Oh my God, I'm glad you brought him up. So I think right now, if you ask me moving forward, I'd probably still take JT and McCaffrey. He's right there after him though. His usage is insane. I think he got 25 touches. They have nobody else. I think the Breida might have got 2. I mean, the usage is crazy. He looks healthy. I know he got off to a slow start in the first half or whatever, but if you got Barkley in the end of the second round, you paired him with one of these JJ or a Cuppert, I mean, the sky is the limit. I mean, you're looking at towards week 15 right now in my eyes. And I know there was, I forget one team, it might have been Hubbard even. I think it was Hubbard. He got McCaffrey, Barkley, and then I think he got Kamara in round 3, like an early May FBG. I mean, Kamara, we'll see what happens there, but can you imagine having those three running backs together? It's the only one in the whole tournament, I think.
Yeah.
But he was going so late, ended his second into the early third in those early ones. I mean, it's just a monster advantage. So pat yourself on the back. If you got late, second round Saquon, assuming health, knock on wood, he's going to be, just an easy top 5 running back. If not number one, RB1 is in his outcomes for sure.
I had a buddy over to watch games in week 2, and he had a prop bet on Saquon Barkley, I think over 76.5 rushing yards. And I'm like, well, God, the guy got like 170, 180 total yards week 1. Yeah, that seems right. And he was just getting stuffed, I'm like, and we kind of wrote it off. And then some other dude finished with 72 rushing yards. So he still lost the prop, but he made it close at the end. I'm kind of thinking like, God, are we looking at Saquon Barkley the year where he just absolutely crushed it, where anything was possible? The type of player where he can have 20-some rushing yards in the fourth quarter and just go off,
Yeah, he's motivated. He's healthy. He's playing for a contract. I mean, the stars are all aligned. The offense, we were playing in like the Stone Age under Gettleman and the previous regime. I mean, this is like a whole new world to him. So I wish I had more Saquon. I was trying to, by the end of it, I mean, he was going in late first, mid first, even in some drafts. So if you were lucky enough to get him in the late second round, I mean, it's just a huge, huge advantage, I think. So, yeah.
let's go to the YouTube chat right now. I got the trade offer up from Caden, the Colts fan, who's a viewer of the show. This is an interesting trade, and I don't know which way to fall on it currently. So he would be giving up Cooper Kupp and Javonte Williams, and he gets back in return Devontae Adams. I'm assuming Gabe Davis for the sake of this conversation. Let's assume Gabe Davis, and he gets DeAndre Swift. Now, normally, Andrew, in these trades, I always like to be on the side where I am getting fewer players because it usually means I'm getting the best player or maybe the best two players in the deal. But man, I know Devontae Adams had a week. He had a very poor week 2, very few targets. But I know he's gonna be a target monster the rest of the year. I know Swift was a little banged up, but he had a solid week 2. And Gabe Davis missed week 2, but I think he's going to be a big difference maker in Buffalo for the remainder of the season. Cooper Kupp's still been otherworldly. Javonte Williams has been huge in the passing game. How do you fall in on this deal? Because I'm not really sure which way. Maybe it comes down to who he's cutting to pick up this extra player if he gets the Adams Davis Swift end of the deal.
I would make this trade in a heartbeat myself, to be honest with you, because I'm just looking at it. I think Swift is a better option. I love Javonte, but I'll take Swift rest of the season.
You like Swift better than Williams? Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So then you're getting Devontae Adams and Gabe Davis for Cooper Kupp. Yeah, I'm gonna take those two guys for Cooper Kupp. I mean, Devontae Adams, you're not giving him two schlubs here right now.
Right.
As great as Cooper Kupp is, Devontae's what, 5th, 6th best receiver in fantasy. So
yeah.
And you're getting Gabe Davis, who could be a top 20 receiver easy. So I like that trade. Take the extra player back, and I think you're straight there.
I'm just looking at this too. The last 2 days of the FFPC main event drafting, Devontae Adams was drafted as wide receiver 5, and Gabe Davis was drafted as wide receiver 15. I did not realize that he was going that high. And Swift,
you see some crazy stuff in Vegas.
That's true.
I was sitting it was funny at those draft tables in my last main. I was drafted next to Glenn Lowy, great guy, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I was at the 103, he was at the 104. Devontae Adams came back to him in round 2. He took Cooper Kupp. He took Kupp in 1 after the Thursday night game. So I was surprised.
That's insane. Yeah.
That's insane. And then Devontae falls to, what was that, 2-9.
2-9.
Which is insane. I was looking at him. I'm like, this is the type of stuff you don't see online. This is just Vegas mains. I saw Kelsey fall to 2-4 in 1. I actually went up to one of the tables for that draft. I'm like, guys, what are you doing here? How are you going to let Travis Kelsey fall to 2-4? I mean, You know what it is too, Balky? I think a lot of the times when these owners don't have the draft, the queue up, they don't have the site they're looking at. They're not looking at the queue of players. They're not seeing a guy like Devontae Adams screaming, pick me, pick me, pick me. So he just kind of slips through the cracks and he falls to, the 21st, whatever pick in the draft. It's just, I was sitting there because I was picking next. I'm like, oh my God, he's going to take him. He's going to take him. He's going to take. And of course he took him. Glenn's a super sharp guy. So it's just interesting to see that the difference from these online mains and what you see out there in Vegas. So I loved it though. It was awesome.
It's funny about that is like I've heard for years that it's way easier to draft online, way easier. But something like for the point you just made, sometimes I wonder if maybe it is a little bit softer at certain parts of the draft. Players,
for sure. Yeah, actually this year I was in. I thought tougher tables, tougher rooms than I was last year, but. Yeah, you just see stuff like that. You don't see anywhere else. It's just you hope to be in one of those rooms where that guy falls to you, and just it was just crazy to see some of these guys falling into these spots.
So, let's talk about week 3 here. A player that you think maybe not a lot of people will be starting this week, that you think a lot of people should be because he's in for a big week 3, and then maybe a guy that you think a lot of FFPC players will be trotting out in their starting lineups. That maybe they shouldn't be because you think he's in for a really bad week.
Yeah, so one guy that I want to be starting that I think a lot of people won't be is Damien Pierce. I know we saw, the first week how a lot of people kind of nervous, and rightfully so. He played like 30% of the snaps only. But we saw those roles reverse with Burkhead in week 2 where it was Damien Pierce leading the way, and he got 65% of his snaps. And Burkhead, they kind of reversed, and Burkhead played like 30%. But I went back and I just watched those runs. I mean, he's electric carrying the ball. Like he's fun to watch, and I think better days are ahead. I think the Texans are an offense. I'm kind of bullish on them. I think a lot of people are too down on them. That division, it looks weak to me. I think we're going to kind of lean on Pierce moving forward, and Burkhead's 32, 33 years old. We know what he is. Pierce has a lot of juice. He's explosive, huge burst through the line. So I'm still impressed. I know a lot of people, were down on him after week 1, but I think he's a guy that you could safely roll into your RB2 slots this week.
Before you get to the player you want to sit, I'll just bring this up. Week 1, Damien Pierce, 20 snaps. Rex Burkhead, hold on, 50 snaps. Yeah. I wanted to make sure I was reading that right because that seems like a lot. But Damien Pierce, 20, Rex Burkhead, 50. This Burkhead, he goes from 50 to 23 snaps. Damien Pierce goes from 20 all the way up to 39. So he almost doubled his snap count in week 2. We're always looking for the new normal. This could be the new normal in Houston with Pierce having not only an uptick in snap counts, but obviously in touches, in targets, in receptions, in everything, in yardage. So I think you're right, right on with Pierce there. Now, for a guy that a lot of people will be starting that should not be started, who's that player?
Yeah, this is going to pain me a little bit, but it's the guy that I'm going to bench. I think that most people would probably be starting. You might have to, is Travis Etienne.
Ooh.
And I was very bullish in the preseason, like everyone else. I didn't think James Robinson was going to come back as fast as he did. But I mean, if you look at their usage, so they were kind of split week 1, but last week, I mean, James Robinson got 65% of the snaps, 25 touches, and I think Etienne got 12 maybe. I mean, this is James Robinson's backfield right now. So they are away at the Chargers. So you figure, they could be playing from behind, which would benefit Etienne. But I think you got to bench him right now. And I mean, it's tough to say with some of the injuries out there. And if you have 2 better running backs right now, which might not be the case. So I can understand having to start him. But if I have 2 top 20-ish running backs, they're starting over Etienne, and I'm going to find a wide receiver in my flex. You got to wait to see it. I mean, right now, he's getting 10, 12 touches, and he's not doing much with them. So I hate to say it. I mean, he's a desperation flex at this point.
Right.
So, and this is a guy that was going second round, in August, crazy. He was dropping towards the end, end of draft season, which, I did a draft with the GOAT District guys. We got him in the early 4th, and we were high-fiving. We're like, this is amazing.
You should have been. I would have been. Yeah.
And now 2 weeks later, I'm like, I don't even want to start this guy. Yeah. But it's just kind of where we are right now. And James Robinson, once again, he was going round 12, 13 in fantasy drafts.
Yeah, exactly. I'm of the opinion that James Robinson, there is nothing that you can do to him that will slow him down for fantasy. Put him on a horrible team, he's still a top 5 running back. Tear his Achilles, he's back week 1 the following year. Put him in the same backfield with Travis Etienne, and he's doubling his snap count. It's insane. Robinson had 34 snaps week 1. Etienne had 36. This past week, Robinson was out there for 45, so he goes up by about 25%, and Etienne down to 26. Okay, so you're talking about Robinson almost on the field twice as much as Travis Etienne.
Yeah.
I totally regret starting Robinson, or not starting Robinson last week. And I have a couple of dynasty leagues where I had Robinson, and I went out of my way to acquire Etienne. Now I'm wondering what the hell I was doing, because I should have just kept Robinson. But it's a long season. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah,
but I'm with you this week.
And I think Etienne, he's going to be, listen, it's early on. I think he's late in the season. You're going to see his role grow more. And, he's definitely more dynamic, pass catcher and in space than James Robinson. But to your point, I mean, this guy, Robinson, he's just a bull. I mean, this guy, there's no give up in this kid. So he's going to be there. He's going to be there all year, assuming he's healthy. So, yeah, I mean, the ceiling that I thought was, Alvin Kamara for Etienne, it's definitely not Alvin Kamara. You're looking at maybe flex, low RB2 moving forward. Obviously, if anything happens to Robinson, he'd be a RB1.
Right.
But again, you need an injury, and us drafters did not believe we needed another James Robinson injury for him to pay off. But that's what looks to be the case right now.
Yeah, right now it does. Absolutely right. Final question of the night here, Gilds, and it comes from B-Dubs in the chat room. He wants to know what to do with Darnell Mooney. Keep starting him or bench him. Now, Mooney, as a reminder, for those of you who did not see, week 1, 3 targets, 1 catch, 8 yards. Things got to be better week 2. Nah, not so much. 2 targets, 1 catch for -4 yards. And granted, he went up against some pretty tough secondaries in the Niners and the Packers in weeks 1 and 2. But Justin Fields didn't look at all interested in passing the ball on Sunday night. 11 total attempts, only 70 yards. I think we're right to be concerned about Mooney at this point. I don't necessarily know if you need to start looking at benching him. But, I mean, Ayuk is probably a better start than him this week. Elijah Moore. Jerry Jeudy can go. I'm starting Curtis Samuel this week over Darnell Mooney for sure. Those are all players I'd be looking at. How do you view Darnell Mooney and what's happened so far, Gilds?
Yeah, I would, it's really roster dependent, but to me, he's definitely bench worthy. He was going in the 5th, 6th round. So, you're going to have a good 3 or 4 better options, most likely.
You should, yeah.
Assuming they're healthy. So, I know on a couple of my teams, I have like an Elijah Moore versus Mooney, or like you said, Ayuk versus Mooney, where I'm taking the other guy in those situations. Now, you're definitely going to be forced to start him on some teams, again, with some injuries and whatnot. But yeah, it's rough out there. I want to say I'm bullish, but Fields he scares me. He really does.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that he can play. The tools are all there. He's got the arm. He's got the legs. It's just, you see him out there. He gets frazzled. He makes one read, and you feel like if that player's not open, it's like hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
So I don't know that he's going to be. He might need more time. I don't know, but if I'm forced to start Mooney, I'll start him. But I'm not opposed to benching him for a top 30-ish. Top 36 wide receiver right now.
Take it with a grain of salt when I say this, because one of the things, and I host a sports talk show in Northeast Wisconsin during the day, and I hate unnamed sources, because for all I know, people could be making it up, and if you're not going to attribute it, don't say it, which I totally should subscribe to. I'm not going to right now. A little birdie who I trust told me that the Bears players, the Bears coaches, less than enthralled with Justin Fields as their starting quarterback. So I kind of avoided him in drafts this year. I did not avoid Cole Kmet. I have him in a few spots. I did not avoid Darnell Mooney a few spots. I have him in a few spots. And Cole Kmet's a whole different discussion, 0.0. He's on pace for no points this year, coming up on week 3 of the season. He's on pace for no fantasy points.
Oh my gosh!
But I'm still, even after what I saw in that first quarter with the Packers and Bears on Sunday Night Football, where the Bears look pretty good, I'm still not at all crazy about Fields and that offense. I could be wrong, and this source could be wrong as well, and maybe Fields ends up turning on and has a great season. I'm just not seeing it right now.
Yeah, the problem too is with these high draft picks, quarterbacks especially. These days we tend to see it early on with these guys, right? You could kind of spot if they have it right away, and
right.
So this is year 2, and you're still kind of having those questions, and that's not a good thing. Yeah, no. You would think it kind of would click for him by now. But real quick for you, Balky, I know you're a Wisconsin guy.
Yeah.
Me and one of my partners, Mike Pareca, we were talking about
former FFPC Main Event champ.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike P, great player, great guy. But we're discussing Romeo Doubs.
Yep.
And he's kind of down on him, and I'm trying to say, give this guy some more time. Who's in front of him? Sammy Watkins, Cobb. To me, I'd rather hold a guy like that for now. But I was kind of curious if there's any insight in that area. Like, what are they saying about Doubs? Is he a guy that you think is going to get more involved as we move along?
Yeah, this is a great question. So for Doubs, for me, everybody and their mother was falling all over him, all over themselves to draft him in like the 12th round, then the 11th round, then the 10th round. Right. I saw him going to some single-digit rounds as well. I'll say this about Doubs. There was a ton of people in Northeast Wisconsin very excited about this player, thinking that he could be long-term number 2 in Green Bay, whether it was with Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, so on and so forth. For this year, I was always kind of bearish on him because I was like, that's great, but Rodgers loves Lazard. Rodgers single-handedly brought Randall Cobb back to this team. Rodgers talks about Robert Tonyan a ton. They already invested into Christian Watson in the second round. So there's a lot of competition with Dobbs. And for me, I just kind of forgot about him because I'm like, well, I'm not taking him in the 12th round because he's the number 4 option, or behind Aaron Jones, number 5 option on his own team. That said, you and I and the rest of the world know Sammy Watkins is not making it through 17 games.
Exactly, yeah.
Randall Cobb has not shown he has not shown to be a threat at all in this offense. Now Lazard maybe, but if you looked at that game on Sunday night, I don't think anybody had more than 4 catches. I don't know if anybody had more than 6 targets in that game. So even if Dobbs becomes a player who is going to be a top 3 receiver, or maybe even a top 2 receiver based on performance or injury, I still wonder how much attention he is going to get from Aaron Rodgers, who historically has not thrown to his rookie receivers before. I like the upside, and I like what he could do, and I'm going to fight to keep him on my roster if I have him. That said, this offense is going to revolve around Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, and that defense to keep, it's not the Aaron Rodgers teams of old. So yes, I can definitely see a path where Dobbs crushes it and he ends up being a potential league winner. I just don't think it's likely. That's my personal take.
That's good intel, yeah, and I tend to agree with you. It's just, I want to give the kid more time. Just it's hard dropping kids, especially.
I would not drop him.
Yeah,
I would not drop him.
You hear that, Mike P? Balky's telling you right now,
don't drop him yet. I mean, like, if you get into some dire straits and you figure, I gotta drop somebody here. Maybe Dobbs becomes that player, but don't drop him for like the flavor of the week or anything like that.
Okay, you're speaking my language. Yeah. Okay, good to hear, Balky.
You've been something good to hear all night here. We have gone way over time, which is fine because we had there's a lot of meat on the bone. I think we ate through a lot of it, which was good stuff. I wish you nothing but the best of luck in week 3 and going forward with all your teams. I know you got some pretty good ones in the main event and the Footballguys Players Championship as you're chasing $1 million grand prize in the main event, $500,000 grand prize in the Footballguys Players Championship. We will all continue to follow you at _guilds on Twitter. Andrew Geller, a 5-time top 10 overall finisher in high stakes fantasy football and baseball contests, and a 7-time FFPC Main Event and Footballguys League champ. Thank you, sir. Good luck on waivers this week. Good luck in your leagues this week.
Thank you, Balky. I appreciate you having me on, and Vegas for having me on the podcast. And
absolutely.
Farrell's a great guy too. I enjoyed meeting him in person. So wish you guys the best of luck. And thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
You got it, man. Be good. We'll do this again soon.
Thank you.
Andrew Geller, ladies and gentlemen, popping on _guilds on Twitter. Always good to hear from him. A lot of good stuff here tonight. I think we covered it all. We had roster manipulation. We had lineup decisions. We had draft analysis from some of his drafts tonight. Whatever it was that we didn't get to tonight, I apologize because I just didn't think of it. But we will be back next week. And I think we're going to have another luminary on the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. I think I have to check my email, but I think we've hammered down next Tuesday, 9:30, 8:30 Central, a guy who's won a ton of FFPC main events and Footballguys Players Championship leagues, Rob Vieira, who I believe started off week 2 in second place in the FFPC main event overall in that chase for $1 million, but he's going to be on the program next week. Do not forget a few things. Number 1, Better Sports Network tomorrow, 10 p.m. until midnight Eastern time. It will be me. It will be Devin Knotts from footballguys.com. You can watch us on Twitter and YouTube. I don't recommend that. I recommend going to your Android store, your Google Play store, and your iOS app store. Download the Better Sports Network app so you can watch us right on the app. That way you will have access to the fun button, which will give you access to all the great prizes we give away. We gave away a ton of NFL signed jerseys in the first couple of weeks on the Better Sports Network, whether it was my show or Corey Parsons' show, Nando DeFino's show, all these Rick Hamlin's show, all these great shows that we have on there. We gave away a ton of stuff this past week. We're going to be giving away a ton of stuff this week. Go to the App Store or Google Play, Better Sports Network, download the app so you have a chance at winning all those great prizes. That is 10 p.m. until 12 a.m. We'll have your first look at FFPC waivers tomorrow as well. Myself and Devin Duvernay from Football Guys will analyze those as well. We might get into some DFS stuff as well. Speaking of DFS stuff, do not forget about the brand new FFPC Weekly Challenge. It is the playoff challenge format, no draft or salary cap. Choose 10 players or choose 12 players by Sunday's kickoff, and then you can watch them all the way through the weekend's games. Only one player per team. $35 to enter or $200 to enter, and you can win up to $10,000. 30-team and 150-team contest. You can play the classic with the kicker in D or the slim without the kicker in D. You can enter up to 3 times in the 30-team contest or 5 teams in the 150-team contest as well. MyFFPC.com is your home for that, so make sure you're checking that out. Without further ado, I will just tease this. Friday night, in addition to the Better Sports Network, we will be live, a high-stakes fantasy football hour at 10/9 Central right here on the FFPC YouTube channel. Myself, Farrell Elliott, and one of the luminaries, one of the studs from week 2 in high-stakes fantasy football will be joining us as well. That is at 10/9 Central. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. We will be back next Tuesday for the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown with Rob Vieira. Good luck in your waivers and your lineups for week 3. Hopefully the ball bounces your way, and we will talk with you again on the BSN app tomorrow, HSFFOR on Friday, but the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown on Tuesday night. Thank you for listening to the High Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. And thanks to Grapes for our theme music. Please review the podcast on iTunes under the RotoViz radio feed. It helps us find new listeners. Contact us via email, rotovizradio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think, and follow us on Twitter at RotoVizRadio. And remember, you can always support the show by subscribing to RotoViz at a 10% discount through the NFL podcast homepage, rotoviz.com/podcast.